The originals were great, but the reboots, not so much.
By my balls, girl! I thought you were dead!
Welcome to WatchMojo.com, and today we'll be counting down our picks for the top 10 worst video game reboots.
I'm you, or at least I was.
For this list, we ranked the worst reboots and revivals of classic games, based on how they were received by critics and fans at launch, and how they stacked up compared to the original.
There's ways to torture a man that go far beyond the frail limits of flesh and bone.
Number 10, Final Fight Streetwise.
One time, bro! One time!
The title that inspired this game was among the best 2D arcade beat-em-ups, but the franchise didn't transition well to 3D. It wasn't even good 3D, and the visuals were flat out ugly.
Who needs a perfect face? I've seen how much trouble it brings you.
Not only did it look more like a Fight Club wannabe than, well, Final Fight, but the camera issues and dumb AI meant that it had none of the fun gameplay either. We wanted each brawl in this game to be our final fight, because we couldn't wait for it to stop.
If you don't drop this loser, I may have to.
Number 9, Alone in the Dark.
I'm the light bringer! I'm the f***ing universe!
The 1992 game that inspired this disaster is widely considered to be the first 3D survival horror game, but its reboot seemed to forget what the term Alone in the Dark actually means.
What happens next won't be your fault, but refuse, and you'll both die.
The title moved protagonist Edward Canby from a haunted mansion in 1920s Louisiana to modern-day New York City, and it feels a lot more like a Roland Emmerich disaster film rather than a horror game. On top of all that, the crappy level design is made worse by the annoying controls, and the overload of awful glitches ruined any possibility for terror. Number 8, Sim City. How the hell do you screw up one of the most beloved PC simulation franchises of all time? Well, let's start with the problem of not being able to even play the game because of the mandatory use of the internet connection, brought on by the unnecessary multiplayer components. If that weren't enough, the build space was frustratingly small, making the game feel much more like Sim Suburb than Sim City. It's since patched some of these problems away, most notably allowing you now to play offline. But it's a screw-up that EA will probably never live down. Number 7, SpaceRaiders. Space Invaders was one of the most influential games of all time, but this title was a poor attempt to make it dark and gritty.
My town! It has been destroyed.
It made the classic 2D shoot-'em-up into a 3D, urban-set third-person shooter, where you can only move right or left, and it destroyed all of the charm of the original in the process. And there's literally no challenge in the game, as you have unlimited continues. It's a completely unnecessary game that's best left forgotten. Number 6, Golden Axe Beast Rider. Not an arcade beat-em-up like the original, but a 3D hack-and-slash adventure with a heavy influence on violence to bring it up to an M rating. Sadly, the added violence still wasn't enough to keep it interesting. Despite its title, the actual riding of beasts doesn't particularly work well, because the creatures are tough to control and it's too easy to get knocked off. The game also suffers from poor hit detection and environments so drab that you'll get bored quickly thanks to its repeating enemies. Number 5, Bionic Commando.
I'm just a man, Spencer. I can't give you the last 5 years back.
Unfortunately, he can't give us back all the time we wasted on this game either. If making protagonist Nathan Spencer into a potty mouth with dreads wasn't bad enough, the game has one of the most absurd plot twists ever, in which your mechanical arm turns out to be your missing wife. Your guess is as good as ours as to how that's supposed to work.
It's okay. I'll always be by your side.
The stupidity doesn't really stop there, because the repetitive movement scheme and unmarked invisible walls get real old real fast. Number 4, Shadowrun. We have no idea why developers thought that it would be a good idea to resurrect a classic cyberpunk RPG into a multiplayer-only FPS. We just know that it didn't work.
Sorry, alright?
Setting aside that there's no stat tracking or leaderboards, the glitchy servers make it take forever to find matches. The game was so poorly received by critics and fans alike that the development studio behind Shadowrun closed down a few months after the game's release, and the series wouldn't see a return to its roots until a successful Kickstarter revived it many years later. Number 3, Bomberman Act 0. This one just baffles us. Trying to turn the light and fun Bomberman series into a dark and brooding experience with a dystopian setting. Bomberman was turned from an adorable robot into a terrifying cyborg for this game, and shackled with a repetitive campaign where you're constantly fighting the same mindless drones. To make matters even worse, the game scrapped local multiplayer, which is pretty much what made the original game fun to begin with. Number 2, Sonic the Hedgehog, 2006.
And don't worry, I'll rescue you!
I know.
We debated if this counted as a reboot, but since it disregards the previous continuity and was simply titled Sonic the Hedgehog, then yes, this crapfest counts. The frustratingly long load times, annoying camera, impossible controls, and glitches galore took away all of Sonic's charm. The story was ridiculous too, with a human princess that constantly gets kidnapped to the point that it's mind-numbing, and a bestiality romance subplot that's equal parts what and ew. It was a truly low point for the series.
Sonic! Sonic!
Before we get to our number 1, let's take a look at some honorable, or in this case, dishonorable mentions.
Gets it back and all is forgiven.
Number 1, Dungeon Keeper Mobile. The PC strategy game that became a cult classic has forever been marred by this abomination.
Your dungeon heart beckons for attention.
It's free to play, but it's got so many paywalls that it destroys anything that made the original fun.
Tough love is never a bad thing.
An ad for the game was actually banned in the UK for misleading customers, and the publisher was caught flat out manipulating its ratings in the Android Play Store. Peter Molyneux, developer of the original, labeled this reboot as ridiculous, and we completely agree, although we're also wondering if he's played any of his own games lately. EA, for the sake of gamers everywhere, please don't do this again.
You have conquered this realm.
Do you agree with our list? Which video game franchise do you wish had stayed dead?
I'm hurt and I can't open this door! But what's the deal with this building?
For more top 10s better than these games published daily, be sure to subscribe to WatchMojo.com.